Recording. The holiday of Purim. And another little more than 2 weeks is going to be the holiday of Purim. We're celebrating this holiday for a holiday that happened over 2,500 years ago. The holiday of Purim occurred between the first and the second temples. And it occurred right when the temple was being built, when the temple was finally built. The story of Purim is a very strange story. And it's a story which is filled with what they call divine intervention or divine direction. It's called hashgacha pratit. And the point of the story is the uniqueness and amazingness of the Jewish people in face of impossible odds. So the story goes like this. Basically, it came down to the whole entire world was against the Jews, including the Jews themselves. And miraculously, God saved them, showing that God loves the Jews, even the Jews that don't want to have anything to do with God. God wants everything to do with the Jews. So how did it happen? It happened like this. The story begins when the first temple was destroyed. The first temple was destroyed 3,338 years after the creation of the world. The first temple was destroyed. First temple was destroyed, the Jews were taken to Babylon. And when they went to Babylon, so all sorts of amazing, crazy things were happening in the world. In those days, it was like World War II almost every other few years. Every so often, some king would stand up and he would just take over the whole world, just take over everything and amass an amazing, huge army. And they would go and stab people and shoot them and shoot arrows at them and kill people hand-to-hand combat and just kill who knows how many tens, hundreds of thousands of people. And then they would take over the country. And then eventually another king would come and he would take over, and then somebody's son would kill his father, and then his son would kill him, and another person with this, until finally the whole thing wound up that there was a king which was called Achashverosh. So let's go through this history a little bit. It's pretty amazing. It starts off, there was a fellow called Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, he took over the whole world, conquered the whole world. About 150, 140 years before he destroyed the temple, he took the 10 of the 12 tribes. He conquered them. They lived in the northern part of Israel. That was called Yisrael. And he took them and he conquered them and took them away. Nobody knows to this day where they are. 10 tribes. It says the Mashiach is supposed to bring them back. Who knows what that means? But he's supposed to do it. Some people say the English are among the 10 tribes. That's why the royal family gets circumcised. Some people say the American Indians. Some people say there's tribes in Japan and India. Absolutely nobody knows. Afghanistan, there's people look Jewish over there. To this day, absolutely nobody knows where these people are. There's all sorts of theories and books and things that are written about it. But that was the 10 tribes that were taken away. Like I said, about 150 years after that, Nebuchadnezzar came and he conquered the Beis Hamikdash. Conquered the Beis Hamikdash. First of all, it wasn't Nebuchadnezzar that did the first. I'm sorry. That was Sennacherib. Sennacherib, he took away the first group of Jews. He sent somebody who was called Shalmaneser. In any case, they took over the 10 tribes, and 150 years later came Nebuchadnezzar, and he destroyed the first temple, and the Jews got sent to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar. After that, Nebuchadnezzar dies and takes over his son, evil Murdoch. After that is taken over, evil Murdoch dies, and he is taken over by Belshazzar. Belshazzar, he rules for a very short amount of time. He has this amazing vision. Anyway, now there starts this custom by all these kings to interpret the prophecy of Jeremiah, of Yirmiyahu, which says the Jews are going to be in exile 70 years. Now, where do you count these 70 years from? Some will say from the destruction of the temple. Some say when Nebuchadnezzar took over. Anyway, they all make all these weird mistakes, but the mistakes, because they're the king of the world, so everybody has to, when they're sure of something, so everybody has to listen to them. So Belshazzar, he makes this mistake that the Jews, the exile of the Jews is finished, and the Jews are lost. They're not good. They haven't gone back to Israel, and that's it. They're not going to go back. The prophecy has been ran out of time. So he takes out all the vessels from the temple. The Babylonians conquered the temple, right? Takes out the vessel, makes this big meal, and he sees the handwriting on the wall. And the hand comes out mysteriously and writes out many, many takal, Farsan, your time has been later. And the next day, his sons kill him. Happy ending. And Belshazzar comes to his wicked end. Who kills him? A son which is called Darius. There's going to be another Darius also, Darius. And Darius, afterwards, he doesn't live that long. He is taken over by Koresh. Koresh, he has a son of Koresh. Koresh also makes this calculation about the 70 years, but he interprets it totally differently. He says because the 70 years has come, so he's sending the Jews back. He's sending them back to, this is about 18 years before the temple is built. He sends them back to Jerusalem, and he tells them to start building the second temple, and they start building it. The problem is that then stands up, first of all, there stands up a group called the Sadducees, the Tzaddukim. And the Tzaddukim, they oppose the regular normal Jews. The Tzaddukim are something like Reform Jews. They don't rely at all on any of the interpretations of the Torah. Everything on the Torah they agree with, but they don't agree with any interpretations of the rabbis. The rabbis, that's called the Perushim. That's like Rabbi Akiva and Hillel and Shammai, all these great tzaddikim. They're called the Perushim, and they make up the explanation of the Torah. They were given the explanation of the Torah, and they learn the Torah out by different ways. Anyway, they explain the whole Torah. And the tzaddukim are against them, and the tzaddukim go to the next king, and they convince him to stop the building of the temple. That's where Achashverosh comes in. And so Achashverosh, he's now ruling over the whole entire world. And he's refusing to let the Jews build the temple. And he also makes another calculation that the 70 years has gone by, and he makes this big meal to celebrate the end of the Jewish people. And the Jewish people are scared. They think that maybe it could be right. I mean, here this evil man is ruling over the whole world, and the Jews are in bad shape. The temple is destroyed, so they participate from the meal. And that starts the whole beginning of the end of the holiday of Purim. And what happens? All of a sudden stands up this amazing genius, and his name was Haman. And Haman was also a very big Kabbalist. He understood the mysteries of the Torah. You understand, all these people, they all believe that Judaism is true. They believe in the prophecies of the prophets, and they know the Jewish people are chosen. They know the Jewish people, God took them out of Egypt. God built them the temple. When they do God's will, God does whatever they want. But they all make the mistake of thinking that the Jews are basically been rejected by God. And so he makes this big meal, and the Jews also make the same mistake, and they go to the meal. And stands up Haman from this whole business. And Haman realizes it's his big chance. He's going to really make it in all the history books, and he's going to finally destroy all the Jews. History is going to be Jew clean, Judenrein, no more Jews. And he devises this plan and this plot to destroy and to kill all the Jews. And he realizes he's not going to have much of a problem with the other Jews, but there's going to be a big problem with Mordechai. Mordechai is the leader of all the Jews, and he realized that as long as Mordechai is there, that there's always going to be problems. So what does he do? He takes these amazing steps in order to defeat the Jews. He knows that according to logic, it's never going to work. God likes the Jews. It says the Jews are filled, every Jew, even the sinners of Israel, it says, even the sin, Rekanim Shabam, even the sinners of Israel are filled with mitzvahs like a pomegranate. Pomegranates are supposed to have 613 seeds. I've never counted it, but that's what it says. So every Jew, even the most empty Jew, is filled with mitzvahs, with good deeds, and with blessings, like a pomegranate is filled. So he figures he can't deal with the Jews in any sort of a normal way. The only way that he can really deal with the Jews and have a chance against them, and also because they all ate from the meal of Achashverosh, so they sort of seriously put a big flaw in all of the merits that they might have. So he figures now is his big chance. He's going to go above logic. If he goes according to logic, he's bound to lose somehow or other. So he's bound to make a mistake. So he decides he's going to throw the whole thing on God. And he takes lots and he throws lots. Even though he happened to be on his own a big genius and a super, like a Napoleon, who knows what he was, a tremendously spiritual and deadly person. He rose up, shot up to the top. He became the king's chief advisor, and he decided he's not going to go according to any of his talents or his abilities or what he's going to throw lots. And these lots are going to put him above nature. Because if you think about it logically, it sort of makes sense what he did. I mean, in the end, he believes in God. And he knows that God is creating him. God is creating Haman. And so he says to himself, if God is creating Haman, it must come from some sort of a place, a spiritual level where God is creating me from. He's creating me from this level, which is free choice. Why is there evil in the world? So that people have free choice, they can choose. That's how I'm getting created, is from this level of free choice. So he decides he's going to go above free choice, and he's going to throw lots, which is above. I'm not going to make any choices, he said. He throws the lots, it's on the side. And it comes out for what he thinks is the best of all. It comes out in the month of Adar, the 12th month, which is 12 months from when he throws the lots. He threw the lots like right in the beginning of the month of Nisan, and the lots came out to destroy, kill, liquidate all the Jews. Lashmid, laharog, labed, it's called Yudim Nar, V'zakein, Taf, and Hashim, to kill them all on one day in the month of Adar. He said he was very happy because that was the month that Moses died. That was the month that Moses died. He didn't know that was also the month that Moses was born. And because Moses was a big tzaddik, and Moses, it says in the Torah that Moses never really died. It says Moshe Rabbeinu lo mate. He didn't die. So Moshe, that he died wasn't really real. And that he was born was really real. That was really real. And that he just sort of didn't realize that. But anyway, that's going to come out in the end. What he did not count on, and then after that, he built a gallows 50 amas high, which 50 amas high means about 75 feet high, which is about like a 7 or 8 story building. He built a gallows 8 stories high. Now, what do you have to, in order to hang a person, 10 feet is enough, 1 story. What does he have to build at 50? So it says 50, it goes according to a Kabbalic principle, which is called the 50 gates of understanding. He went above the 50 gates of understanding. To the source of understanding. He appealed to all these levels, and it was closed. He was going to win. He had it figured out, and he had reached the source of his own being, and it was closed. There was no way that he was going to lose. What he did not deal with, what he did not count on, was the ability of the Jews to have self-sacrifice, to use true free will. Now here, this is the big secret. This is the whole thing. What is true free will? What does it mean, true free will? Anytime a person makes a choice, there's always some determining factor. There's always something that's pushing him or pulling him or deciding him. This is a big thing with Freud and Adler, all these psychiatrists. What is pushing? Nobody does anything genuine. There's anything genuine. Everything is caused by some sort of a personal motive of something other. Something is influencing a person. Everything is influencing a person. Well, to a pretty big degree, he's right. But the Jews have the thing called free will. And what does free will mean? That they can make choices that are totally uninfluenced by anything. They can take two things that are totally equal, and they can make free choice totally. What's free choice? What two things are equal? Either to live or to die. Let me explain this. If a person says, I want to live, so he's counting out dying. If a person says, I'm willing to die, then living means nothing to him. How can it be? So it says like this. According to Chabad, we've talked about this before. The decree of Haman was 1 year. The decree of Haman hung over the heads of the Jews to kill all the Jews. When was this supposed to be? In the month of Adar, which was 1 year after the decree was made. Haman was killed. Haman was hung a few days after he made this decree. After Esther heard about the decree, so she declared a fast. They all fasted. That was on Purim, on Pesach, in the middle of Nisan. And Haman was hung on the first day of Chol Hamoed Pesach, the 17th of Adar, of Nisan. He was hung on that and killed on that day, on the gallows that he made. But the decree still stood. So the king said, okay, I'm going to allow the Jews to fight back. Before that, the Jews couldn't even fight back. The Jews can buy weapons and they are allowed to fight back, which the odds were about 500 to 1. There was no way that they were going to win. So the Jews had a very simple way out. Who wants to fight against 500 Gentiles that are out to kill you? There was a license to kill to every non-Jew in the world, to kill every Jew. Any Jew they wanted to, they could kill. So true, the Jews could fight back, but you get 100 of your friends or 10 of your friends, who has a chance? And then we're talking about the babies also and the women. So the Jews had a simple way out. The simple way out is, say I'm not Jewish. The decree was only to kill all the Jews. Anyone who wanted to say I'm not Jewish, he wouldn't have to worry at all. There was no worry for the decree. And the decree was only to kill Jews on this one day. So all you have to do was say, just say on that day, I'm not a Jew, and they couldn't kill you. So the Alter Rebbe of Chabad, the first Rebbe of Chabad, in his book called Torah Or, he says that not one Jew even thought to get out of the decree by saying, I'm not Jewish. Not one Jew even, Ola b'machshava, didn't even go into his thought to say, to think, to consider denying his Judaism. That's why in the Megillah, it's the first time in all the books of Judaism that Jews are called Yehudi, Ish Yehudi. And the name Jew was really started in Purim because it says a Jew is a person who denies idolatry. So in other words, what happened with the Jews? What's this free choice? Listen to this. The Jews had a choice. Either they could say, I'm not Jewish and live, which means their Judaism wasn't that important to them, at least a little bit, wasn't important to them. So the Judaism was like zero, and life was the main thing, want to live. Or they could say, I am Jewish, and means that life meant zero to them. They were risking their life. You can't fight against 500 people. That was a free choice. Either life meant zero, or Judaism meant zero. And all of them chose Judaism. All of them, all the Jews. And that was the miracle of Purim. Because of that, is not one Jew was even harmed. They fought against the non-Jews, and universally, the whole world, Jews were spread all over. All of the non-Jews started to be afraid of the Jews. And it says, a lot of the non-Jews even converted. They suddenly realized what the God of the Jews was. So this is then the story of the amazing, amazing story of Purim. The amazing story of Purim is that Haman spiritually and physically had a totally planned out and was assured success of, God forbid, defeating and destroying all the Jews. But because the Jews made this amazing choice and they chose Judaism over life, and of course in the end they also lived. So this was the happiest of all holidays. It says that Purim is even stronger than Yom HaKippurim. Kippurim is just like Purim, it's just like Purim. Because with the joy of Purim, you can accomplish forgiveness for all sins and for all bad things, even more than you can on the holiday of Yom HaKippurim. And even more, it purifies the world also. You use the world, you make a meal, and you join your friends in. There's happiness, and there's gifts being given, and you make the poor people happy. You give them also money. It is the idea. The holiday of Purim is maybe more than all the other holidays a sign of what's going to be in the days of the Mashiach. And that's why it says that all of the books of the Torah are going to be negated, except for the Megillah. Of course, it doesn't mean the Torah is eternal, but the Megillah, it says the Megillah has something in it, something eternal, this essential choice of the Jewish people to always choose that they are Jews, no matter how good it is and no matter how bad it is. Of course, we know that unfortunately, this amazing choice that they make didn't last that long. And that's one of the reasons now in Purim, we do not say Hallel. Why we do not say Hallel? Because it says Akati of the Achashverosh. Even now, we are still servants of Achashverosh. In other words, through the holiday of Purim, awakened in the Jews this amazing inner connection to God, where everyone realized that our free will has to be totally for the right thing. It's more important than choosing our life. Choose God, yes. But unfortunately, it wasn't deep enough and it wasn't constant enough. And that's because the whole thing depended on Mordechai. If it wasn't for Mordechai, a Yehudi, the Jews would have never made this choice at all. And so it is now in our generation. In every generation, there is the Mashiach of the generation, the Mordechai of the generation, the Moses of the generation. And the Moses of that generation, of every single generation, he is the one that encourages and brings all the Jews to have this level of devotion and joy to God that they don't care about what happens in the future. All they're interested in is just to do the will of God. So this is the holiday of Purim, the happiest holiday in the world, because all we are interested in is doing what God wants in the happiest possible way that there can be. And this is what's going, just like it was back then, this was the happiness which changed the whole course of history, and the Jews were given permission to rebuild the temple, to continue rebuilding the temple, which was built the next year. And it will be the force which will build the third temple speedily in our days, when it will be a holiday, like it says, that the days of Purim will never stop by the Jews. And Kiblu Avakimu Yehudim, it says the Jews will actually fulfill what they began to do on Mount Sinai 3,300 years ago, that we will actually serve God in a permanent way, in a happy way, in a blessed way, with totally being God's partners and being God's sons. And in the third temple, so as far as action goes, let's just look and see. The holiday of Purim is going to be next in 2 weeks. Monday night. On Monday will be the fast of Esther, and Monday night we'll be reading the Megillah. And Shushan Purim, those people who live in towns that are surrounded by walls, or that were surrounded by walls. Yaffo, some people say Jaffa, and Jerusalem. Other people, they read the day after. They read on the 14th. You have to hear the Megillah read twice, once in the nighttime, once in the day. And in the daytime, you have 3 additional commandments in the daytime. They are, I'll start with the letter Mem. Mishloach manot, you have to give at least one gift of food containing 2 things. Manot, 2 types of food that are edible immediately. You don't have to, like, not raw meat or raw fish or something you can eat immediately. To at least one friend, minimum, one friend. You have to give 1 coin to 2 different poor people. 2 different poor people. You have to give matanot le'evyonim, at least 1 coin to one person and 1 coin to another poor person. And you have to make a mishnah. You have to make a happy meal, a festive meal in the day, in addition to hearing the Megillah again on the holiday of Purim. So happy Purim to everybody. God willing, next week we'll talk about the same subject, but maybe we'll start talking about the holiday of Passover, Pesach, and we'll connect Geula leGeula, redemption to redemption, with the arrival of the Mashiach, Bez Hashem, today, and we'll all dance together with the Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu now. Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you very much. Looking forward. All the best.